So as I mentioned before, the Sicilian Dragon may be the most popular form of the Sicilian, and it's really fun to play, and you get a lot of really similar positions out of it, which is really great, so you know what you're trying to achieve. So let's just go through it, and I'm going to give you as much information as possible in this lesson. I've got an entire couple of courses on openings where I go very deeply into this really rich opening, and it takes like a whole entire course to learn all the variations for both black and white and everything. But I'm going to give you guys as much as I can in one lesson so you can go out there and use it effectively in your game. So let's just get straight into it. So we know we go e4, c5, the knight comes out, our pawn goes up, and then 90% of the time, white will play this move. They know the opening and all. They know the lines that come out of the open variation, and they get a really good attack. White has something called the English attack, something called the Yugoslav attack. There's a Fischer-Sozin attack, and we're going to learn all of those later in the course. And they're very effective attacks for white, which is why we really need to know the opening and how to defend against those, and then get our own counterattack for black. So we trade off this pawn, which is actually a good thing for black. We're trading a c pawn for one of white's central pawns. So in theory, we benefit a lot from this exchange, but white gets a temporary strong center and their pieces are coming out very effectively. So in chess, you're usually giving up something in order to get something, and then the side that wins out will be the one that over time makes the best moves, understands the position more deeply, and gains an advantage, creates weaknesses, and eventually tips the scale in their favor, which leads to a decisive attack on the king or winning some material and then converting into an end game. So we play our knight out, and they play their knight out, and this is where we go into the dragon. So we play g6. We're going to fianchetto our bishop. If white knows the opening, they will immediately play this pawn move, usually to f3, in order to stop the black knight from coming down here and threatening the light squared bishop that wants to be placed on e3 here. This is a natural formation for white to put their bishop on e3, put their queen on d2, and be prepared, especially when we have a fianchetto bishop, to try to trade off that bishop later in the game when the time arises. Because whenever you have a fianchetto bishop, the whole point of fianchettoing it is to make it a strong piece that aims down this long diagonal. It's one of the reasons that this position got its name the Dragon Variation, because this position with the open board has such a strong bishop right here that we say it breathes fire down the board. It's a fire-breathing dragon. It's such a strong piece. And also because of the shape of the pawn structure right here, it kind of looks like a dragon as well. So that's why it got called the Dragon Variation. And so we're going to fianchetto our bishop. White will continue with their plan of setting up their skewer here, this battery of these two pieces. We will castle immediately, right? Castle early and often. We almost always want to follow that rule. Very rarely will we not want to castle our king. They'll put their queen there, and we will just continue with our development. We are knight out. If they want to trade knights here, that's fine with us. We'll take with this pawn, and we'll have a really strong central pawn structure and an open b file. We can put pressure on this pawn and have them make concessions. A lot of lower level players do this. If I play this move, usually if it's a really low level player, they won't get to this position anyway because they won't know exactly how to set everything up. But when I do this, even players rated 15, 1600, they'll trade off this knight. And this knight that they have for white, it's a good piece, it's in a good location, and they've already moved it twice. So trading it off for this black piece has only been moved once, and then strengthening our pawn structure is not a smart thing to do. It doesn't make any sense, basically. So you don't have to worry about them taking that knight and putting your pawn here and derailing our plan of setting the opening up like the way you learn in this course. Your opponent will make different moves than you're going to see in this course. At some point, they will vary from it, which is why we need to know what we're trying to get out of the opening, and just follow the moves as best we can, and then adapt when they vary from it. In theory, when they vary from the book moves, that means they've made an inaccurate move. It's not as good as the book move. So that means that we should be able to take advantage of it in some way. But to follow up with the opening, we're continuing to develop and set up our pieces on these really good squares. Black's going to have this open or semi-open C file, so it makes a lot of sense for us to move one of our rooks here and aim it down the board. White is going to usually castle long and attack our king. It's a very dangerous attack. This setup right here works very well for white in many, many different situations, because against a fianchettoed king, You want to try to trade off the bishop, as I said. You want to pawn storm. You got your rooks aimed down here, and it's very dangerous. So we need to know how to defend against it. But if you know the best moves to use to defend against it, we can successfully do so, and then we can counterattack on the other side and hopefully win the game. You've got to know some of the key moves. Okay, so after they castle on, we're going to continue to develop. We're going to get our bishop here. We're going to get our queen out, usually to a5, which does a couple things. It threatens this square if this knight moves. It threatens to trade off the queens because black has a really good endgame setup here. A really strong pawn structure, and if these bishops come off, and if white has a strong attack and we're able to trade off the queens, that alone will usually nullify the attack on the king. Usually you need your queen for a good attack. Once the queens come off the board, the position will slow down without all of that power of that major piece. Not always, but usually that's what happens. So if we can trade off the queens, and then we have a really good endgame position, and we can also attack their king with the pawn storm ourselves. So usually we want to get our queen here. This queen being on a5 also does the extra thing for us of helping to defend this really important h5 square. As we'll see, when white makes their pawn storm, we want to defend this square, and we want to keep these pawns closed. Whenever your king's being attacked by a pawn storm, you want to keep the position closed up. You don't want to allow it to be opened up, because that allows the attack to come down on your king, and pieces can get pinned and traded off, and there can be sacrifices, and you can get checkmated. And so this is why this is a really dangerous attack for white, which is why this is a really fun position to play for both black and white. But from black's point of view, if you know how to defend against this, not only in the Sicilian defense, but these patterns that you learn with this opening can also be used in lots of other openings. And so we're going to learn that as well. So we get the bishop out. Usually white will want to bring their bishop out to c4 because it pins this pawn, and then when their attack comes later, and if they are able to trade off some pawns right here, you can't take back with this pawn. Or if somehow this gets traded off, the bishop's aimed at the king, so it adds some pressure here, and it gets the piece out so the rooks can be connected. And so it's a really popular move to play. Okay, and then usually what they will do is they will tuck it away over here, so that if a rook comes here or a queen goes here, then they're not under any threat of losing that piece to a tactic, because it's not defended right there. So usually they'll just tuck it away right away. Okay, so let's say for example we play queen here, the bishop comes down, and now this pawn is being defended twice, and everything is fine. So a typical thing that might happen now is that if it's a really strong player, they will oftentimes also move their king over here, so there's not this gap, because once these pieces get moved, this is a threat. So they usually take a move to move their king over. Black wants to move a rook over. It makes sense to move this rook over on the c file. It's aimed across from their king on this semi-open file, and also it makes it so if white tries to prematurely trade off this bishop right here, you can just tuck the bishop down here. It's this little trick that we use when you want to keep your fianchetto bishop from getting traded off. As long as that rook's not here on f1, once you've moved that, you can just tuck your bishop right here, and this is fine. White's not gaining anything by doing this, by trying to trade off the bishop. We just avoid the trade and we keep our strong bishop. And notice it's aimed all the way down this board. It's aimed all the way down to here at this b2 square. There's no pawns in the way, so if there are theoretically attacks on this knight, our rook is also aimed at this knight. So sometimes you want to sacrifice the rook here, called sacrificing the exchange, right? To take a minor piece. The rook and queen are called the major pieces, and the knight and the bishop are called the minor pieces, right? And so usually you don't want to trade a rook for a minor piece, but sometimes it's a really good idea, and it can lead to an attack. And oftentimes it will be unexpected, because most people don't expect you to trade a higher value piece for a lower valued piece. But sacrificing the exchange is one of the favorite types of sacrifices among strong players, because you're not giving up all that much, and it can lead to some really good stuff for you. So, but let's say they don't move that bishop down there just yet, because it is premature. It doesn't really accomplish anything yet. Later on, they can try to trade it off. And now notice we have two rooks down here, and once we get these pawns going, we can very quickly attack white's king, with our queen being where it is and all our pieces being where they are. Usually, though, what happens is white's attack will come even faster, because they're set up to touch our fianchetto position more quickly. So they'll play something like g4. And the attack will come. And we just continue to develop. If they do that, we're not worried about anything yet. We might play this move here, knight to e5, and we're threatening this f3 pawn. It's defended, but that makes this so this knight can't move. Otherwise, you can take it with a tempo on this queen. So this knight's got to stay put. We're also threatening to go to c4 right here, and threatening to trade off this knight for this dark squared bishop. And if we're successful at doing that, now this position, or this bishop right here, our dark squared bishop, is even more powerful because it has no threat from the opposing dark squared bishop to trade it off. So now this piece becomes even more powerful than it was before. It becomes almost as powerful as a rook. So usually a good player won't let us do that. If we play knight to c4, they will trade their light squared bishop for this knight, and we'll just have a trade there where both sides get something. This light squared bishop is also a good piece for them. It's aimed down on their king. So by trading off this knight for that piece, it weakens his defense of this square, and we're trading off one of their good pieces for one of our, we could call this knight a good piece, but its primary purpose is to make this trade and sort of soften up their king position. So this is a good position, or a good move to make. Usually white here will go ahead with the attack. See, the pawn storm is coming fast. Now this is a key move in the Dragon variation. It's been analyzed for literally decades. The strongest move to play right here is to play h5 immediately and stop it. If they continue to try to open up immediately like this, we can just take that pawn back with our knight, and the position is closed. And then we just leave our knight there. It's closed. It can't be opened up. If this light squared bishop was over here instead of here, which some people like to do, it's a little bit more dangerous in this sense, because then they can push this pawn forward and threaten to take our knight, move the rooks over, and that's dangerous as well. There's lots of different variations. But in this case, it's closed now, and their attack is pretty much stopped. They can push this pawn forward and knock this knight over, and we can make the move I said previously, but their attack is coming more slowly. We've got lots of ways to defend, and again, another reason why we put our queen here is because it's also another way to defend this. So a good player won't immediately take that pawn because it doesn't achieve what they want, which is to open up the position and attack the king. So at this point, they're going to bring over more reinforcements. Now again, if they try to trade off the bishops here, we just avoid it like this. If they try to take this now, we just take it back. So this is how you defend. And everything will be fine. You're going to have an equal position, and now you can counterattack. So it would be an ineffectual attack if white does it. And a lot of white players will be impatient, and they will just try to open everything up like that, but you have to calculate, and they realize that they don't have quite enough firepower to make a successful attack yet. And if they do this, this is even better for us, because they think, okay, I'm gonna lodge these pawns up in their grill and make this knight move. But actually, this is a closed position now. There is no attack. I mean, the pawn's gonna go here and maybe come here. It's slow. It doesn't work. We can just move our knight over here. The position is not going to be opened easily. So this is actually a really good thing. This means their attack is pretty much done. If you're the attacking side and you're using a pawn storm, then you don't want the position to be closed. You want it to stay open. Okay? So that's not a good thing to do. So typically, what would white do then? White would probably just move a rook over and do something like this. Maybe move the queen over and get ready to take here. Now maybe they can take. And then when we take with the knight, now they can maybe look at some sacrifices, right? They've got this bishop right here. And so now if they take and we take with the knight, the rook could take this pawn, theoretically, depending on where these pieces are, and this pawn can't take back. So now it's starting to get a little bit more dangerous. But we're going to make this move, and we're basically going to force white to trade off this light squared bishop. So these are the themes that you're going to see. These are the positions you're going to see, and depending on how your opponent plays, it's not going to be exactly the same, right? But this is a really typical game. I've literally played this exact position to this spot, these exact moves, probably 100 times. If your opponent knows the opening well, they will make these best moves. But it will also vary, and you can play many number of other similar scenarios also hundreds of times, depending on which rook you move over, depending on where they put this light squared bishop, depending on the exact move order. It changes things. And so that's one of the reasons why the Sicilian defense is so fun to play. There are millions of variations, and they all play on a similar theme of black's going to be putting pressure on the queen side, white's going to be attacking on the king side. Each of these pieces is going to be serving a similar function in all positions. The battle between these dark squared bishops is going to be going on. The battle between these knights and this bishop is going to be going on. This theme between what the queens do is going to be going on. And it's just very interesting. And so we're going to be looking at different variations of this type of position throughout this whole course. And I'm going to try to link it together so you can see, even though each variation of the Sicilian and each variation of each variation, each line, are different. We're following a similar theme, and you need to basically become fluent in all of them so that no matter what your opponent plays, you can go into a line that you know well and get a good position.